The notion that a monolithic idea of non-alignment shaped India's foreign policy since its inception is a popular view. The evolution of India's foreign policy has been shaped by its experience in balancing competing interests during the Cold War. This continues to influence contemporary policy debates as India seeks to shape its role in Asia and the world. Hello, this is Lydia, and today with Speaking Territory, a podcast by the School of International Relations and Strategic Studies, we are going to talk about how Indian diplomacy tackled changing world order post-Cold War. In power and diplomacy, the conventional wisdom that non-alignment shaped Indian foreign policy has been challenged by unveiling another layer of India's strategic culture. In a richly detailed narrative, using new archival material, the author not only reconstructs the worldviews and strategies that underlay geopolitics during the Jawaharlal Nehru and Indira Gandhi years, he also illuminates the significant transformation in Indian statecraft as policymakers redefined some of their fundamental precepts on India's role in the subcontinent and beyond. His contention is that those exertions of Indian policymakers are equally opposite and relevant today. Whether it is about crafting a sustainable set of equations with competing great powers, formulating an intelligent Pakistan policy, managing India's ties with its smaller neighbours, dealing with China's rise and Sino-American tensions, or developing a sustainable Indian role in Asia, power and diplomacy strikes at the heart of contemporary debates on India's unfolding foreign policies. India's international influence varied over the years after independence. Indian prestige and moral authority were high in the 1950s and facilitated the acquisition and developmental assistance from the East and the West. Although the prestige stemmed from India's non-aligned stance, the nation was unable to prevent Cold War politics from becoming intertwined with the interstate relations in South Asia. On the intensely debated Kashmir issue with Pakistan, India lost credibility by rejecting the United Nations call for a plebiscite in the disputed area. In the 1960s and 1970s, India's international position among developed and developing countries faded in the course of war with China and Pakistan's support from the United States, and China and Pakistan's dispute with other countries in South Asia, and India's attempt to match Pakistan's support from the United States and China by signing the Indo-Soviet Treaty of Friendship and Cooperation in August 1971. Although India obtained substantial Soviet military and economic aid, which helped to strengthen the nation, India's influence was undercut regionally and internationally by the perception that its friendship with the Soviet Union prevented more forthright condemnation of the Soviet presence in Afghanistan. In the late 1980s, India improved relations with the United States, other developed countries, and China while continuing close ties with the Soviet Union. The end of the Cold War significantly affected India's foreign policy, as it did for much of the world. The country now seeks to strengthen its diplomatic and economic ties with the United States, the European Union trading bloc, Japan, Israel, Mexico, and Brazil. India has also forged close ties with the member states of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, the African Union, the Arab League, and Iran. Though India continues to have a military relationship with Russia, Israel has emerged as India's second largest military partner, while India has built a strong strategic partnership with the United States. Post-Cold War, India's strategy was non-alignment. Meanwhile, the country had to solicit a bailout from the International Monetary Fund to address a serious balance of payment crisis. Consequently, India launched reforms which opened India's economy while improving trade and relations with the United States, as well as with Japan and other East Asian powers. In 1998, India conducted nuclear tests which boosted the country's national security status. During this period, India also saw rapid growth in economy and poverty reduction. One could argue that India actually did well out of the West-led liberal order that marked the globalized era. After 1991, the policy of non-alignment became multi-alignment. in which India retained the flexibility to have good relations with everybody. All of this can be glossed as India wanting to preserve its independence and freedom of action and to have more of a say in global affairs. In a world that has become increasingly worried about China overreaching, India is an important partner. It is the only country in the world whose human resources can match China's. It is committed to rule based international order. It has the world's fifth largest economy with room to grow much further. It can help with diversification and building resilient global supply chains. It is remarkable to say that India has been successful despite drastic changes in the situation around. The collapse of the Soviet Union, globalization, the rise of a powerful China, and the diminishing role of multilateral norms and institutions. At the broadest level, India has not only safeguarded her independence but has also increased her options and role in the international system. By following a policy of non alignment during the Cold War and of strategic autonomy thereafter, India has leveraged her growing capabilities to relatively good effect internationally. The world is again at another turn point, and the effectiveness of previous policies and habits seem to be diminishing. Unlike the recent past, multiple Chinese incursions across the line of actual control in the Western sector in 2020 are being consolidated and show no signs of being vacated in response to India's diplomatic and military countermeasures. So, while India's independence is not in doubt, her territorial integrity is still challenged, with even Nepal raising new territorial claims recently. However, overcoming the blight of poverty, Indian foreign policy plays a facilitating and enabling role, helping domestic policy to achieve its goals. Here, the record is more mixed. While some may view missed opportunities for several decades since the 70s, Indian foreign policy has provided the necessary security and peace to enable India to concentrate efforts on domestic transformation. The results were spectacular during the high growth years, with India pulling 140 million people out of poverty in the first decade of the century. By most metrics of power, in the last 40 years, India improved her position vis-a-vis every other significant country, with the exception of China, which did even better. Here again, however, since 2012, the rate of transformation has slowed. Despite past successes, we still have a long way to go before we can say that we have eliminated the blight of poverty and built an inclusive and plural society that serves every citizen's needs. Today, the international environment is no longer as conducive to India's economic interests, even though the integration of India into the world economy means that the external sector is much more important to India today than it was before. For various reasons, including resource endowment, India needs the world's energy and commodity supplies, technology and capital, access to markets, and an open international trading system if we are to succeed in eliminating the blight of poverty in India and creating a modern, self confident society where every Indian has the opportunity to achieve their full potential. Besides, even if there have been some less than glorious moments, the Indian foreign policy apparatus has displayed an ability to adjust and respond, to learn from experience and mistakes, and to reform itself. Whether it is military reforms after 1962, or the separation of external intelligence after 1965, or the creation of new instruments of economic displays after 1991, emphasis on national technical means after Kargil, the Indian state has shown a great ability to adapt to external challenges than it has to internal challenges. It appears likely that we will need much more of this as the world and the balance of power around us continues to change rapidly. While we have learned from setbacks, sometimes learning from success seems harder. It is probably time to study and learn from the successes in building India's relationship with Bangladesh in the last decade and a half, from those times when the China relationship was managed productively, from the remarkable transformation across governments and administrations of India US relations, and from India's long haul nuclear diplomacy, and so on and so forth. Thank you for listening to this episode. For similar content, stay tuned to Speaking Territory, where we post new episodes on contemporary issues around the world on every Monday and Friday. Also, don't forget to follow us on Spotify, Facebook, and Twitter.